Hi, it's Professor Murray. Welcome to Lesson 2 of Project Management. Today we're going to talk about the project management process. If you look in Canvas, here's Lesson 2. We've got this intro video that I'm doing right now. There's some readings that you need to do for this topic, and then there's a quiz for you to go and take at the end of the lesson, which is the end of today. Before we get into that, let's talk about what a project is and what a project isn't. So first of all, a project is time-bound, and that means that it has a definite beginning and an ending. If you're in a business, say you work for Ford Motor Company, and you're building cars, that's not a project because it doesn't have any start and end point. You build cars every day, day and night, I guess, and you keep doing it until you change your process and you do something a little bit different. But that's not a project. So a project has to have a time bounding. It has to have a definite start and a definite ending. Second is it has to be unique. So it has to be something that's not done on a regular basis. It has to be specific. It has to have predetermined budget, resource requirements, time that it will take to do the project, and most important, it has to have a specific outcome. It has to be coordinated. The project includes all the activities required to do that specific project, and it does not include external or exogenous activities. If you were building a new building on the campus, a new student resource building, then that would be a project. Doing a parking lot repaving next to the building would not really be part of that project. Project itself would be to construct that building. Lastly, it has to be something significant. For example, planting a tree in your yard, that's not really a project unless it's some great massive tree, but just going down to Home Depot and buying a tree, digging a hole and planting it, that doesn't qualify as a project. Here's some examples of projects. Solar panel installation on the Bakersfield College parking lot, the West Side Parkway in Bakersfield, even the 2020 commencement ceremonies is going to be actually a major project because no one really knows how to do that yet. Converting the SimLab PLCs into portable trainers, that would be a project. Not sure we're going to do that, but if we did decide to do that, that would be a specific project. The Great Wall of China is a very famous, very old project. Software developers are very project oriented because they get a requirement for some specific software, then they develop that software to meet that requirement, and then they're finished with that. What's not a project? A restaurant making meals, that's not a project, that's a process. A police officer patrolling the highways is not a project. Amazon shipping books and shipping food, that's not a project, that's a process, something they do every day. Then there's related things that are almost a project, but not really a project. And let's take a look at them. One is a program. A group of projects, such as all the various construction projects that are going on BC's campus, is a program. It's a program to modernize the entire campus. They're building several buildings, they're putting in solar panel farms, they're building new parking lots, and a lot of other large and small projects. Another example could be Lennar Homes. They're building a new subdivision in Southwest Bakersfield. So that would be a program. The program consists of many projects, so each house is a project, and all together they're a program. The other category that's kind of related, but it's not a project, is a portfolio, which is even larger than a program. It's a group of programs. Again, with Lennar Homes, they have programs in many different cities where they're building subdivisions of houses. All of Lennar's programs together would consist of a portfolio. Those two things we're not going to really deal with in this course, so it's just to know that they're out there. We're going to be using the textbook put out by PMI, Project Management Institute, It's called the PMBOK or PMBOK. It's kind of a industry accepted guidebook. So it's a really good book for us to be using. And as I told you in the previous video, it's very economical for us. This book is broken into two parts. The first part they call knowledge topics, and the second part they call project management process. Today we're going to deal with project management process, and then we're going to get into topics in the next lesson. So here's kind of an explanation of what processes and knowledge areas are. Across the top here are the project processes. There's initiating a project, planning the project, executing the project, and then closing out the project. Those are 4 time-specific parts of the project. We also have knowledge areas, and that's down this left-hand side. We've got scope planning, scheduling, cost management, quality management, and all these different knowledge areas. And you notice that the different knowledge areas all extend through some, most, or even all of the different process phases. With scope planning, it's mostly done during the initiating and planning stages, and then maybe it's revisited from time to time to revise the scope. Down here on procurement, procurement is another word for purchasing. That might be looked at a little bit during the initiating process, maybe looked at again during the planning process, and then during executing, that's when really all the purchasing is done. And hopefully when you're closing out a project, you're not still buying things, so it's not really involved out in the closing phase. It can get a little confusing because, as I mentioned, part 1 is knowledge topics, part 2 is the processes. And we're going to be going back and forth talking about, at times we'll be talking about these process areas, and at other times we'll be talking about these knowledge areas. The other thing we're going to talk about today is the project life cycle. And really that ties to the process stages. So a project life cycle is you start the project, that's initiating. You organize and prepare, that's the planning stage. You carry out the work during the execution, monitoring, and controlling phase. And then you end the project. And as I mentioned earlier, each of the knowledge areas plays different roles during each of those parts of the project life cycle. Now what I want to do is I want to open up the PMBOK and just guide you through that a little bit. So here's the book, and when you open the PDF it shows a table of contents. And notice here part 1 is a guide to the body of knowledge. So this is an important body of knowledge, and if you look at what's in there, here we see scope management, schedule management, cost, quality, resource management. That's all these knowledge groups going down the left-hand side in part 1. In part 2, down here, they call it the standard for project management. And the standard has the initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing groups. If we go back to my diagram here, that's all these phases. Part 1 talks about a specific topic, knowledge area, and gets into heavy detail on that topic as it applies to each of these time portions of the project. Part 2 talks about, it's kind of a vertical slice. It talks about, for example, the planning section, how each of these knowledge areas are applicable during the planning section. So it's kind of 2 different approaches, and we need to make sure we don't get tripped up by that. In Canvas, and I'll switch to Canvas now for a second. Here I've got readings for lesson 2. And when I open that, it says to read parts of chapter 2-1. 2-1 is part 2 and section 1 in that chapter. And as you can see, this chapter has I guess 11 different sections. I don't want you to read all of these sections. And actually, if you look to the end of this book, they've got around 750 pages in this book, so it's quite massive. And then you also get another bonus book called, I want you to pay careful attention then to what I suggest to read. In this lesson, I want you to read section 2, chapter 1, and I want you to focus on these pages, page 547 to 556. That's only 9 pages of reading. I don't want you trying to tackle this entire textbook. I want you to read the sections that are going to be most beneficial to you. For lesson 2 then, you've got a few things to do. You've got this video to watch. You've got those readings, that's around 9 pages to read, and you've got a quiz to do. If you haven't finished all the requirements in lesson 1, you also have to get that done. Remember, don't get behind in this course. We're going fast and you need to keep up. Talk to you soon. Thanks.